We have Mike Russo on the line, and Mike is with sparkoffer.com. So you can definitely check out the website, sparkoffer.com. And we're really going to throw you off here a little bit today, Mike, because what you've done here is something that's always perplexed me. And we're going to shift the conversation because I understand that your website is really for those people who are trying to essentially auction off properties that they own, correct?
It's for people that want to sell quick and take control of the process, not just list on the MLS and hope a buyer shows up.
Right. So this is really intriguing. And we were chatting before we hit record here, but I thought we would focus on a couple concepts here because I think this type of website, your website, is a great avenue for people who are wholesaling properties or wholetailing properties, and they need to flip them quickly. But just the concept alone, when it comes to the way you're doing pricing associated with properties, as a wholesaler, that's part of our business. We're trying to get as much of dollar as we can. And to put a flat fee on every property actually has never really made complete sense to me. So an auction situation like you're offering is pretty appealing. So first of all, how did you start or come up with this idea regarding Spark Offer?
Yeah, sure. So from 2010 to 2017, I was one of the partners of the largest luxury real estate auction company in America. And during that time, I sold $1 billion of homes at auction, somewhere between $1 million and 20 million. And actually, after I even sold my interest in the company in 2017, I too decided that I'm going to try my hand at real estate investing. And I never did wholesaling, right? So that's something that would be a completely new concept to me. But I did go in my local area and, saw a house that was, sitting on the market and, investigated it a little further because it was a single family, but turns out that the town had it rated as a 2-family, but it wasn't being marketed that way. So it was an opportunity for me to buy it and then create a true 2-family out of it and add a lot of value, right? But the idea behind Spark Offer really came because I bought a couple REO properties, and they were properties that were very non-transparent, right? So I'd put in my offer. I think I put in a good offer, and many times I put in a full price offer, and I'd get the phone call to say, hey, we've got multiple offers. We're going to go to best and final. And I didn't really know how many other offers there were. And I just didn't like that, right? I didn't like, especially coming from the auction business and being, a licensed auctioneer, saying like, hey, I know what my competition's willing to pay. And so, but I think there's this notion of it that, with auctions, traditionally every deal is cash non-contingent, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to have the money, and you got to be willing to take the risk, right? And the majority of the world doesn't operate that way. They operate with some kind of condition. Either they need to go find the money, or they want to inspect the property after they've agreed on a price. And that's how I came up with the idea for Spark Offer, taking that traditional offer process, hiding the prices that everybody's willing to pay because everyone's got their own set of terms, but creating the type of prompting that somebody would expect in an auction, so that anyone that's following a property, once an offer is submitted, gets an immediate alert that says there's 1 offer on this property, there's 2 offers, there's 3 offers. And it also, what we found, takes away from that issue that people have, where it's like, hey, if I knew that property was going to get an offer, I've been waiting to make a bid, but I kind of thought the price was too high. And now I only know because it's under contract and I missed out. So the world has lots of multiple offer opportunities. It's just a lot of times it lacks the prompting and notifications for them to know it. And that's how I came up with the idea.
Sure. So on your website, like I went to one of your listings and I see like more of a price range. Like I'm looking at a house that has, um, I guess I'm in New York, so this house is pretty pricey, but it says 3.8 million to 4.3 million. Is that the range that
The
the
seller will
system is?
consider.
Oh, that's what the person would consider.
Yes. Yep.
Oh,
So
okay.
we've tried two different models. So one is, a static price. And the challenge with static prices is that it's very binary. Either the market likes that price or they don't,
Right.
right? And then the opposite is this guide range. So a lot of the houses that we've started out with on Spark Offer, they typically had been on the market and hadn't sold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest fear for sellers is always, lowering my price too much, and then like, what did I get? I don't know what I gave up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I often joke that Zillow's created, a digital tattoo on every seller's rear end, that like everything they've ever done with this property is forever tattooed on their bum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we sold a property, a year ago in Connecticut. It's Zillow history looked like a bad rap sheet, right?
Right.
It'd been on and off the market for 8 years, and that's why. So to be clear, we did announce in December, that this month that we were introducing an auction platform into Spark Offer, and so now people can either use our core offer process where they set a guide range and say, here's a deadline, and here's the range I'm willing to consider. Or for those that don't want to give a guide range, because we were running up against that, where sellers are saying, I don't want to let the market know what my bottom number is. I just want people to come and bid for my property or make me an offer. We're just looking for that next buyer. And so we tried to do something different in around our offer process, but really felt, based on my experience, to reintroduce auctions, because if you don't want to set a guide range, you really need to go to auction, right? If you want to leave your price static.
Hmm. So how is this range working for you? Like, I would suspect that people that were interested in it then would gravitate towards the lower of the two prices because of the price range. But have you found that to be the case, or do they naturally start submitting other bids, knowing that once you mentioned they get notifications when a property is receiving a bid?
Yeah. So essentially, that's a good question. So it's everyone's fear, right, that I'm just going to get my lowest number,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's been somewhat surprising, right? So number one is, whenever there's a presence of more than one offer, that hasn't been the issue, right? Um, that's number one. Number two is, even in absence of the second offer, meaning the first person that comes in, logically you'd say they're probably going to offer the low end of the range, but we found that that's not even necessarily true, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it really comes about that, Barbara Corcoran used to be our advisor at my old firm, right? So I know her. She's a
Mm-hmm.
great woman. She had this saying that
From
was,
Shark
everybody
Tank.
wants it. Yep. Everybody wants what everybody wants, and nobody wants what nobody wants.
Right.
And whenever you have any asset, I don't care whether it's a house, a phone, a piece of artwork, whenever there's a sense of competition that somebody else wants this, right? Then like, I'm going to make my full judgment of like, how bad do I want it? And that was the lesson I learned in my first REO deal, because when I made that offer at full price, they came back and said, I'm sorry, we're going to best and final. I didn't get the opportunity to see who else was bidding on it and at what price. I had to really decide on what that asset was worth to me. What was I willing to pay for it based on what I think I had to put into it, and what I could sell it for. And I wound up paying, I think 10% over ask was my second offer in order to get it.
Okay.
right? But would I like to pay less? Sure. I mean, for all I know, even to this day, anyone else that was bidding might have been tens of thousands of dollars behind me,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the seller got the best yield based on the competition and keeping the prices to themselves.
So if a person is involved in the auction scenario, all they're being notified then is that somebody else is bidding on the property. They're not. What other information are they provided as a potential buyer?
On Spark Offer, right, in our traditional offer product, that's all they're being provided. On our auction product that we've introduced this month, you can see the prices that people are bidding.
Okay. So sparkoffer.com is the offer site. What's is it sparkauction.com for the
It's spark.auction, but the properties for auction are being introduced in the next week on Spark Offer. It's the
Okay.
same website. We can
Oh,
help you. Yeah, we can help you either aggregate competitive offers or competitive bids. It's just a matter of the main criteria is, am I showing the prices or not?
sure. So besides this, so this price range thing is really interesting to me because as wholesalers, and if we've some of the people that we've talked to in the past, I don't know if you're familiar with the fella. His name is John Martinez. Um, John would suggest that you should, to get in that front door, you would provide typically a range to an individual to test their interest. So we would and to get into the door and do a property type walkthrough, you would
Right,
establish a range, and it basically anchors that person in a. So you would typically on the low end would be very low, and then the high end would be maybe closer to what they're what the seller is really hunting for. But
right.
at least you've established this range. So people that listen to the show, we're familiar with this range. I've just never seen it in this type of scenario, in this auction, this offer type scenario um where now that I think about it and reverse engineer it, it makes perfect sense. And why wouldn't it work? So with that being
It,
said,
it,
is there other strategies that you're leveraging here that engage a potential buyer?
the the deadline,
Oh,
you
sure.
know, right, and so we're committed to if you take the traditional real estate process and really what's happening nationally, right? Like, and I'm sure, if you look at all the news today, everything is, you got Zillow offers and Open Door, and the market wants this expediency of a cash buyer that's willing to buy my house quickly. And then on the West Coast, they've got this new Sunday.com that's, aggregating, these sort of off market deals. And but those are all private to one party,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the market does seem to want this expediency or efficiency that's coming with these quick things, and that's the opportunity, really for investors. The but the It is around the deadline. We're not trying to tell people like, hey, come put your property on our platform for the next 3, 6, 9 months, a year, that hopefully a buyer is going to show up and buy your property. We're like, it really depends on the property, but we've done them as short as 2 weeks and as long as 45 days,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we've garnered anywhere from a couple offers to 13 offers, right? Which really gives but everybody knows the rules of engagement, right? Like, we're looking for offers by X date,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and if you cross pollinate those two things, which is make something seem really attractive where people come compete for it and put a deadline around it, like you may not, you are going to maximize your return in that period of time,
Sure.
right? And I've got, for one of the things that I learned along the way from one of my investor clients that I've known and been friends with for a decade now is, and this was really interesting to me, is especially on the time side, is he views his money as like a retailer would look at inventory, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times a year can I turn my money over, right?
Right.
So if I have $1 and I want a 15% return, I don't want to, I don't necessarily want to have my dollar return me on one deal 15% over the course of a year, right? I'd like my dollar to return me 5% 3 times in a year, right? And if I
Mm-hmm.
can get that extra turn of 4 times, then I took my return from 15 to 20%,
Right.
right? And so it's along the lines of the same concept.
Sure. So, with that being said, you're launching the Spark auction functionality, and it's going to be incorporated into the Spark offer. How do people get eyes on their properties when they're using your platform? Are you syndicating this information to other websites? Like Zillow, for example, is pulling in the MLS information. Um, how are you getting as many eyeballs on these properties as possible?
It just depends on the property. So number one, um, every property's been different, meaning some of these properties are listed by a traditional agent
Mm-hmm.
and they put them on Spark Offer as well as the MLS, and then they use us as the transaction medium for the date and the prompting and what have you. So that's number one. Number two is we've had some people come, we'll call them like the FSBO hybrid, if you will, which is they want to put their property on Spark Offer. They want to use our marketing and our reach, but also the transaction mechanism. And then we've actually published those properties to Zillow for them, right? But they're not using an agent or the MLS. They're just, essentially kind of putting, Zillow is great for that. A lot of people are searching on Zillow, but it then lacks everything else. And then number one and number two, most sellers quickly, unfortunately, learn that if they put a house solely by themselves for sale by owner, they've literally published their contact info to be solicited by the general public,
Mm-hmm.
much more than they bargained for. So when they come to Spark Offer first and say, I want you to put it on Zillow for me, like we shield them from all that,
Sure.
right? So that's number two. And number three is that we have our own proprietary marketing, depending on the property and the price range, for digital marketing capabilities. So, we're very good at it, right? So, but it depends on the property and the market, if you will. So the way we market, we have sales on Spark Offer, they're $10 million, right? The way
Mm-hmm.
the way we digitally market that property is much different than, a property we did in Nantucket or in Boston that were 300 or 400,000 that, we're kind of fit this model that your listeners have, which is they were investment properties, they were dilapidated. And those properties mostly went through our digital network on a local basis because most of those buyers are local.
Sure. Well, can you walk us through the process here? Let's as if we're doing a listing, because I see you can list for free on your web, on the site here, sparkoffer.com.
Yep.
And then that's going to lead me to, and everybody would be curious, is like, how do you get paid? I mean, you have
Yeah.
to.
We charge 2%.
2%. Okay.
Yep. And so it in my mind, it has become that perfect kind of number, right? Because if somebody wants to sell their property as economically as possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then 2% is a decent number, right? It's a fair number. Or if they want an agent that also wants to amplify their reach and use our software, what have you, 2% is not breaking the bank if they want the added services of a local agent. It's really the market from that standpoint is really, really interesting, right? Because you get if you listen to, NAR and the National Association of Realtors, they'll tell you FSBOs are a shrinking part of the market and not as many people want to do things themselves. But yet everything in our lives is more about do it yourself, right? Like there's just more and more and more. And so we're trying to create like a platform for a happy medium that, can appeal to as many people based on their own needs.
Right.
Right. So to walk you through the process, that's what you asked me, right? So somebody contacts us on the form. We then set up a call with them and just walk through like, where's your property? How do you want to sell it? What's your time frame? And are you an agent and you're looking, or you have an agent, or are you looking to do this yourself? Right. And so, for example, we just did one in Winter Garden, Florida. The seller contacted us. I'd like to use your platform, but I really want to do as much as I can myself. And then that was an example that I gave where we said to them, hey, listen, go get, here's how to best sell it. Go get professional photography, send it back to us. We'll list it for you on our platform. We'll put it on Zillow for you for free. We'll direct all the calls. So we took all the inbound calls. We screened everything out. They had a number of showings set up in the first 5 days and literally sold their property and negotiated. You can actually negotiate an offer, soft negotiate completely on the platform. So they got an offer pretty quickly for 520. They countered back. I think actually it was 512. They countered back at 520. It was brought to them by a buyer's agent. They negotiated the commission in that, and boom, they got a sealed offer and go to contract.
So when it comes to closing, do you set all that up as well, or is that something that the individual kind of selects a local title company?
Yep, we don't get involved in that at all. And so we do offer guidance, right, for people that depends on, how knowledgeable they are about the process. So for example, in this property in Winter Garden, Florida, we said, hey, here's a couple attorneys that we know of in your market. Like you should contact one of them. And then they contacted one of them. They helped them with the contract. They held the escrow, like the whole deal. Right.
Sure.
That's something like I aspire to, but like that's a whole nother, every market's different. I've sold properties in 26 US states, and like here in the Northeast, everything's attorneys, right? Where compared to where you are, just by what you said, you're most likely a title state, right? So escrow sits with title, they conduct the closing, what have you. So they're all different.
So during the handoff process, like, do you have the purchase agreements in place? Is that also on the seller, or how does the purchase agreement work? And does the buyer have an option, a contingency period?
Yeah, so the buyer can make whatever offer on the offer platform that they want, right? So if you go, I'll actually send you some videos. Maybe we actually have some videos and there on their blog too. So there's offers happen in two ways on Spark Offer. Either one, it's a buyer direct, in which it walks the buyer through, what do you want to pay? Are you getting a mortgage? The kind of basic questions, what kind of deposit are you putting down? And then it generates an offer contract it's non-binding, right? Because for us to get in most of the offer contracts or purchase and sale, depending on state, are typically owned by the board of realtors, right? So, that's not something that we can do. Right. But in every state, there's also qualified attorneys that practice real estate for somewhere between $750 to $1,250 a closing, right, on average. And so so number one, it's a buyer direct. Number two is an agent makes the offer, right? And so when an agent makes an offer, they're typically attaching the local forms to their offer for the seller to review. Right.
Sure.
And but depending on those two things, I'm a huge advocate. And I've noticed over the course of time that more both buyers and sellers are tending to say, well, I've got a real estate agent, do I really need an attorney? And I'm the kind of guy that, like, I'm flipping it the opposite. It's like, do not skimp on a transaction for an average of $1,000 on having a licensed real estate attorney. Right. And for that $1,000, like, our goal is to get the best offer for the seller to select. And then after that, really go to a qualified individual to say, let's get this thing, wrapped up in a proper contract.
So one of the things that surprises me here is that it sounds like you're very concierge in the way you're handling the properties that hit your website. Would that be fair to say? You have they submit a form, and then after the fact, they talk to somebody on your team to get the property up and running?
Currently, that's the way it is. I mean, we've actually built the technology that somebody can list their property directly from their phone. We haven't rolled that out in mass scale yet, because we're still trying to interact with the sellers to understand, what the total market need is, before we just try and scale a platform that's going to touch on all those things on a more automated fashion. Right.
Sure.
I also think that, the people want a guide. Most people want some sort of guide, right? Like somebody to say, like, what do you think?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, the basis of all real estate, I don't care if it's a fixer upper, or it's a multi-million-dollar home, it comes down to, was the property marketed properly? Right. And do people like the price?
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's a price for every property. We all read today, New York is significantly down because of the pandemic, right? Because, all these people have left New York, and, but there's no other place in the world that could tell you that every piece of real estate in that city could sell in a New York minute at the right price, right? There's buyers for every asset. It's no different than what you do where you live, right?
Right.
And so the question really comes down to, what's the value? And is there one buyer at that value, or is there 5 buyers at that value?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And our goal is to aggregate those people together.
So what's going to be different here now? You have the Spark auction that you're rolling out this functionality. You're providing more of this is the range. I'll accept offers within this range for your Spark offer. Is there what are you adding there? What's going to be the primary
with the auction
difference? Yeah.
The primary difference is that there's a lot of people that just understand and want an auction, right? And what I said to you before is that if you're trying to accelerate the sale of a property and not change the price, right? So, on offer, you're saying, I see this guide range, right? When the price is static and it's not changing, we were doing a call for offers on Spark Offer, but saying, like, oh, the price is 400,000, for example. Well, if the market didn't like 400,000, for example, then they just wouldn't show up.
Right.
Right. But now all of a sudden, if you say it's an auction, they'll show up. Right. And so, because everybody understands that, I joke and say I spent 2.5 years, and I'm not even going to say how much money, on your show, trying to offer something to expedite a sale, which is essentially the rebranding of the word auction. I couldn't do it. Right. And so we're offering 2 products. One is the offer product, which you can equate to like a sealed bid auction. Right. And where you can name terms, and the only thing that's disclosed is the number of offers. And then the other is the auction product, which is everyone's going to compete on the same terms, right? Which most likely is cash as is, although we are introducing a property that will have a short mortgage contingency. So it'll be as is with a short mortgage contingency. And then everything else people are bidding on at the same, and the prices will be available to see. So if you bid 100,000 and I bid 110, you're going to know I bid 110, and then you're going to have the chance to volley, if you will, right? And it's just going to keep going until the timer runs out.
Sure. Is there a way to prevent the sniping? The people that wait and bid at the last moment.
Yeah, so we have what's called a soft gavel. And so as long as bidding, we set the increments. So let's say it's 3 minutes or 1 minute or what have you. But as long as bids are placed in this example under 3 minutes, the clock will keep returning to 3 minutes until all bids have been exhausted.
Sure. Okay.
Yep.
So no, this is really intriguing option. Like I mentioned before, I don't know what the situation is and whether it's in my market or, and we've been taught time and time again not to set like a specific wholesale fee, if you will, for each property that we sell, and that we should adopt more of a auction type format or an offer type format that you're suggesting. That thankfully you've provided a platform for some people to accomplish this, but we've really struggled to get people to offer more than what we've initially thrown out as our price. It's been hard. It's been a struggle.
It's just a matter of what the price is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for example, what I tell people when a couple of years ago, I looked at one of my first properties when I launched Spark Offer, and I sat with this woman in Southern Connecticut, which, prior to the pandemic, if you had a house over $1 million, it was very hard to sell it in Southern Connecticut. People weren't coming out to the suburbs. And, she had said, there's just no buyers for properties like this in the market. And I said, well, if we priced it at 20% of your current list price, I pretty much guarantee we'll have multiple offers today. And she had said, well, I'm not prepared to do that. And so, okay, well, that's a different aspect, right? Like if your wholesale deals, and this is something that you could do with our auction platform, is you could set your own private reserve. No one has to know it. And you could start the bidding at $1. You could start the bidding at $1,000, right? And the system will either hit the reserve and then alert all your bidders that the reserve has been met. And so they know whoever wins gets the chance to buy it, or you're going to have your best market price and you're going to decide, do I want to sell my asset or not? Right. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference. And that is the core challenge, right? The core challenge is training the market to, come and bid, right? Whether it's on offer or at auction. And so, but you are right. That is the core problem of putting out the number. And I think that's also the challenge that many sellers have today, right? Mm-hmm. Whether, am I leaving money on the table? Am I not asking enough? And the reality is, I don't care whether it's a automated value model like Zestimate, or it's, you ask 3 agents in to give you a price, a CMA on your property. They're not buying it, right? It's just a guesstimate. And so, the market will dictate whether they see value in the property or not.
Yeah. No, and when you ask for a CMA from a realtor, they're going to, typically I've seen it runs a little hot. They're trying to win you as a customer. So they're usually overestimating to your benefit to try to show that there's value there.
That's the core challenge in the market for realtors today, right? Because if you cater to that, like, I'm going to tell you a high price, and then you don't sell it at that high price quickly, then you're doing we got to go down, we got to go down, we got to go down. And then what happens is they've diminished their own value, right? To say, well, all you're doing to tell me to get my house sold is I got to lower the price, right? And so now I've paid you, 6%, and all I'm doing is negotiating with myself, right? And so I would contend, and my goal with our platform is, as we're building our data, is to do this with data, is to say the market knows the number for your house, right? Get it up with something you're willing to take. Give them some guidance, or go to auction and just start it at a unpublished reserve and start the bidding low, and the market will tell you what they're going to pay, right? And then you decide whether you want it or not.
Right. So you mentioned that this functionality, the auction functionality, is rolling out. Like when should people expect it to be like fully available?
Yeah, so it is fully available now, right? We're just adding it to the front end of Spark Offer, right?
Oh,
So
I see.
we're already starting to sign properties up for auction dates later in January. But we actually originally built the software itself that we supply to another company on a white label basis. We launched that in September. We've already had $1 billion worth of bids taken through our software platform, and so now we're just adding that front end look. When you go to Spark Offer, it's going to say like it's for sale or for auction, right?
Sure.
Which one do I want?
Right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I told you I was going to try to not consume a ton of your time, and keep it to that 30-minute mark. But I want to make sure, again, everybody has your contact information. Go to sparkoffer.com, and hope you'll probably, by the time this is released, I'm going to guess that the auction piece is probably going to be on that site as well. But outside of the website, is there any other way for people to get a hold of you?
Sure. They could email me directly at mike@sparkoffer.com, or they can call our 800 number at 844-676-7651. And I like to repeat those, especially in podcasts. It's 844-676-7651.
Sure. And lastly, is there a question you wished I would have asked you here today?
Not that I can think of. You're very good.
Well, I appreciate that. No, I just want to make sure we had everything covered. This is really an intriguing, not only website, but I mean, you got my mind spinning a little bit. And I think there's a couple takeaways there, especially for people who are going to get into wholesaling, and some lessons that they can take from you developing this platform and this business. The way you handle offers and providing a price range, especially, is something that people really need to take note of. I mean, I think there's something there that I'm going to have to experiment with myself.
I look forward to it, and please call me anytime.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, thank you again. And like you mentioned before, there's definitely a lot more topics that we could probably tackle here. Especially, I'm just more curious than anything else. And I might hit you up sometime talking about developing and launching a platform and business like this. I mean, the concept alone, I can't imagine the number of hours and sweat you've put into this. I mean,
it's been 2.5 years from the first day we conceptualized it. My partner and I have a long history in the auction business, and so I've sold hundreds and hundreds of properties at auction, right? There's even things that we have within Spark Offer that we can kind of indicatively know where things will end up based on watching negotiations, that ultimately we want to get in the data for users, sellers to have, or their agents to have. Mm-hmm. But it really comes from selling hundreds of properties at what I call the speed of sound, right? Where we were in a room calling bids, and you can see things like the average person has 3 bids in them, right? It follows through to negotiation, right? Where when people make one bid to their next bid, what's their last bid going to be? There's all math that I can tell you that we watched for years that is proving out in the platform. We're just still like getting enough data together that we can actually make that available.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And the amount of information that you're going to be have available to you. I mean, this is exactly just some of the most interesting information regarding the industry and just how we can possibly leverage this data. Uh, the opportunity there is just almost breathtaking. I mean, the amount of stuff that can be learned from and garnered from this information.
Yeah, no, and we see it, and that's my goal, is to bring it to everyone, right? So whether you want to sell your house yourself or you want to be a real estate agent and sell your house for your client, right? How can we add the most value in the transaction?
Sure. Well, I appreciate it. This was a great conversation, and as always, I'm hoping you'll come back and we can go a deeper dive on a couple concepts here.
I look forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.